Welcome everyone to Around the World to Poland. I'm so excited about this program. I went to Poland last summer and I'm so excited to share this with you. This program is being recorded and will be posted on the Arlington County 55 Plus YouTube channel at a later time as time permits. Our speaker will be spotlighted so that she will be the only one who appears in the recording. We will have time at the end for Q&A. Please feel free to enter your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll get to them at the end. If you prefer, we can feel free to unmute yourselves at the end or use the Zoom raise hand function, and we'll recognize you that way. So that brings me to introducing our speaker, and I am honored and delighted, really, truly, to introduce Katarzyna Rybka-Iwanska, who is the head of public and cultural diplomacy for the Embassy of Poland in Washington, D.C., and she's going to tell us all about the wonders of Poland, and I'm really thrilled that she could be with us today. Thank you all so much for being here with us as well.
Thank you very much, Sheila, for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here with you all and to present a little bit of my country to you today. I will start sharing my screen, and we should be ready to tell the story of Poland through the stories of the Polish women. That's my favorite topic of all the topics out there. Well, I'm sure you will see how much I enjoy speaking about the stories of women and how much they can tell you about my country. But before I start, Sheila, how much time do I have for this presentation? Because I can speak endlessly, and I'm sure it's not the goal of this meeting for me to speak lengthy hours.
You're sweet. We have about an hour for the entire program, so we'll just leave some time at the end for Q&A.
Sure thing. And if anybody prefers to interrupt me and ask questions during the presentation, or share some remarks about particular women, for example, that I'm going to cover today, please feel free to do it, to interrupt and to share what you wish to share. I would be delighted to focus on the needs of yours and on the expectations and the preferences of the wonderful audience that we have here today. So with no further ado, outstanding Polish women. Why exactly outstanding Polish women, and why I chose to speak about women when it comes to speaking about Poland. It's a trivial observation probably, and everybody knows that women are 50% of the society. But at the same time, throughout the history, we were much more focusing in learning, when we were learning about the history of our countries, we were much more focusing on kind of a different and biased perspective. And at some point I thought that, well, maybe we should bring more stories of women to the spotlight, and maybe we should provide them with much more of a stage with the audiences. Their stories can be equally, if not sometimes even more inspirational to all of us when it comes to like living on your own terms, or breaking the glass ceilings, or achieving the unachievable, the impossible things, or conducting breakthrough research when no one is believing in you, or when actually no one wants you to achieve anything or anything like this. And yes, there are many stories that are proving that this is the way to go. This is the way to tell the story also of Poland, a country that has a spectacular history from my perspective, 1,000-year-long history, but it's also the history of not only of kind of growing and becoming much richer by generation of a country, but it's also the story of a struggle. You will hear several stories of women who were for example, contributing to our fight for independence when we lost it in the end of the 18th century. And we lost it for long 123 years. We regained it in 1918. Then we had only 20 years of independence, and we fell victim of World War II. And then after the war, we weren't free. We were under communist rule that was imposed on us for long 44 years by the Soviet Union. We kind of, there was Poland, but that was not free Poland at that time. And now, for the last over 30 years now, we have been very happy to have a fully independent, sovereign country that is doing its best to develop, to grow richer, to grow stronger, to become, and it has become a fully developed country and a wonderful ally, of course, also of the United States and other countries united in NATO, so North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The strongest defense alliance in the world. We have been part of it for the last 25 years. We celebrated 25 years in NATO last March, and it was a huge celebration because we had here our president, Andrzej Duda, our prime minister, Donald Tusk, and our foreign affairs minister, Radosław Sikorski. They three came together because President Biden invited President Duda and Prime Minister Tusk to visit him in the White House on exactly the same day when 25 years earlier we joined NATO on the 12th of March. And I was, just personal note, I was very happy to be in the White House together with them. So that was a big thing and big event for the entire embassy and our entire team that was involved in the organizational efforts of that visit. Now, speaking about anniversaries, tomorrow we will celebrate 20 years in the European Union. European Union, for those of you who may not be very much into the European affairs, the European Union is as the name says, European organization of countries that has been in development since early 1950s. Back then, only 6 countries united their forces towards joint development, economic development. The first name of this community was the European Community of Coal and Steel. So back in the days, coal and steel was the most important in the 1950s to actually rebuild Europe and foster cooperation between the countries after World War II. Now, fast forward to 2004, our country was privileged and very happy after many years of preparations, some 12, 14 years of preparations to join the European Union, one of the biggest organizations in the world focused on international cooperation and economic development. Now we have much more cooperation also in political matters, in defense matters, in security matters, in cultural matters, internal security matters, many of them. 20 years of membership in the European Union has been a huge period or epoch or era of fantastic economic growth and economic development of Poland and also of the European Union as such. So we have many, and especially these 2 huge anniversaries to celebrate this year. There are many more, and I can speak endlessly also about these anniversaries, but let's focus on these 2. They are the most important, and they say a lot about contemporary Poland, because usually when we speak about anniversaries, we speak about the history. Now, these anniversaries of the accession to the European Union and the accession to NATO speak a lot about our contemporary position, the contemporary situation of Poland is that we are a pivotal country and a very important country of Europe. We have worked very hard over the last 30-something years. We haven't had a single longer period of recession. We only had like 1 quarter of recession during pandemic. Everybody had it back then. But throughout the last 30 years, we have been developing very steadily and very impressively. Sheila mentioned that she was in Poland last year. There is 1 person in the audience who is going to see Poland next week. So I very much envy you both because Poland is a very dynamic country, and it's a very diverse country when it comes to cultural offer, when it comes to views, landscapes, and also a very advanced country when it comes to tourism and the tourist offer. And I very much hope that every single one of you will have a chance to visit my country and to see how much we have developed and how much we are focused on making our country even more advanced than it is right now, and even more kind of a contributor to the joint development of Europe and also transatlantic community as such, including the huge contribution into our common security. Within NATO, we are one of the countries that are contributing the most to security when it comes to the percentage of our budget being spent on defense. There is a big discussion, of course, everywhere about that right now. We are spending some 4% of our GDP on defense right now. So we are a big contributor when it comes to this, but not only this, to the common security within NATO. And yes, we have the war just outside our border, east border in Ukraine. Ukraine has been attacked unlawfully and brutally by Russia over 2 years ago. We have been doing our best to help our friends in need, Ukrainian friends in need, not only through the help that we issued for over 2 million refugees that at some point were in our country. Now, of course, the number is different, but we were there. We were there for them when they needed us the most, and we keep being with our Ukrainian friends ever since. And we are also big contributors to their their defense efforts, because they try to defend their country and defend their independence and defend the values that we all stand with, in contrast to the aggressors from the Russian Federation. With no further ado, let's focus on outstanding Polish women. Again, I'm very passionate about the history of women and the stories of women. Here you will see only a few of them. And I need to tell you that when this project emerged within our ministry, I was very much how to say, disappointed. And I was saying, like, why do you choose just a number of women, to speak about? You just cannot say outstanding Polish women are these women. No, we have many more. We have thousands, if not millions of stories that need to be told, have never been told. So like, why do you focus only on like 9 or 10 of them here? And then we figured out together with my colleagues that it's better to start with something, and it's better to focus on several examples that can really be symbolic and can help you tell a lot, not only about these women, but also about Poland. And then let's take it from there and speak about many more. So the first woman that I want to speak with you about, and it's actually going to also be a teaser of one big event that we are going to have in the embassy next weekend on May 11th. So not the upcoming weekend, but the next one. Maria Skłodowska-Curie, many of you may know her as Marie Curie or Madame Curie. So one of the biggest scientists in the history of the world, and well, for sure, the biggest female scientist that has ever been there. Maria Skłodowska. She was born Maria Skłodowska in Warsaw in 1867. And she was one of 5 children in the family of teachers. And she was a trailblazer and a very smart girl since the very beginning. I am reading right now her biography written by her daughter, and I very much recommend it to you. It is translated to English. Her daughter, Eve Curie, has actually been awarded Pulitzer Prize for that biography. So if you have a chance, do not hesitate. There are plenty of copies on Amazon, and you can read a very inspirational biography of Maria Skłodowska-Curie. I will just provide you with just a few details from her biography, which is really astonishing and deserves like a separate lecture or seminar even on Maria Skłodowska-Curie. Now, one of my favorite stories about Maria Skłodowska-Curie is the one about her and her sister, Bronisława. I mean, there were more children in the family, but these two girls were actually they remain my biggest heroines, actually. They really wanted to study, both of them. They were really good at education. However, first of all, in Poland, there was no independent Poland at that time. They lived in Warsaw, that was partitioned, that was part of Imperial Russia at the time. Our country, as I mentioned before, was lost its independence in the end of the 18th century. Part of Poland was taken by Imperial Russia, part of Poland was taken by Prussia, and part of Poland was taken by Austria. The Skłodowski family lived in Warsaw. That was part of the Imperial Russia at that time. And we didn't have I mean, the Polish children didn't have a regular education in schools at that time. I mean, they had education, but that was Russian education. They couldn't study Polish. They couldn't study Polish literature. They couldn't study Polish history. They couldn't study anything that had connection with our identity. So they were learning in a public school in Russian, and then they were also taking some secret lessons so that their identity doesn't dissolve and doesn't disappear. So they had like two educations, and at the same time, they were very talented. Bronisława wanted to become a doctor. Maria wanted to become a scientist, a chemist, or a physicist. But in Poland, that was under Russian occupation at that time, and actually throughout the world, in most of the places, it was impossible for girls to study, to go to university. They couldn't obtain higher education in Poland, but they could obtain higher education in Paris. Now, even now, to study in Paris is a dream of many, but not everybody can achieve that because, of course, financial conditions and everything. Now, imagine being two daughters of a 5-children family in the 19th century, living in an occupied country, and your parents are teachers, and actually their mom passed away when they were in adolescent years. So they figured out a master plan. Both of them wanted to study. Bronisława was older, so Maria figured out, okay, you will go to Paris, you will start studying there, and I will be working as a teacher in one of the noble houses somewhere here, and I will start saving money for your education and for my future education. This plan couldn't work. I mean, that was impossible to do it, but they still did it. And Bronisława went to Paris, started to study there, and at some point, Maria actually could join her, and she did. And they were living together for some time, and this kind of education in Paris at Sorbonne and one of the best universities in the world started because at some point the girls decided that one of them will go and another one will stay, and they will try to save money, as much money as possible, so that they both at some point can obtain education. That's one of my favorite stories about sisterhood, because once you help me and the other time I help you, and we keep empowering each other, and that's one of the best stories that one can share. Now, when Maria was actually obtaining education at Sorbonne, at some point she met Pierre Curie, a French scientist who was a very talented one, but actually was not very much appreciated and acknowledged in France. He was very much acknowledged in other countries, but in France he just couldn't, break this glass ceiling that was above him, and he didn't know actually why. But then when the two met and they started working together, it at some point became possible for both of them, thanks to this cooperation and thanks to this friendship, a relationship and love between each other. It was possible for them to break this glass ceiling that was above both of them. And they were amazing while working together. They were publishing papers together, and they were and again, we are speaking about the 19th century, early 1890s. That's the time when women are not very much, present in the world of science. And usually they are perceived as kind of helpers, employees who are helping clean up the lab and everything. They're not perceived as potentially very talented, outstanding scientists. And then when they were working on research papers, on experiments in the lab, everything they published was always written in plural. We discovered, we assume, we think. That's what, like our experiment proved that and this. And sometimes when they were forced to actually write in a singular, they were writing either like I, Pierre, and then in the next passage, I, Maria. It was always like a common work of both of them. Now, when they discovered breakthrough issues in physics, and the Nobel Prize Committee decided to give Pierre Curie, award Pierre Curie with a Nobel Prize in physics, he wrote to them, yeah, but I have a wife who did 50% of the job, if not even more. And they wrote to him, yes, but like probably she was cleaning up the stuff after the experiments, and she was not kind of, like woman cannot be an outstanding scientist. It's impossible. And he wrote, well, actually she is. She's much better than I am. So either you award both of us the Nobel Prize in physics, or I do not accept the prize at all. And there was kind of a back and forth correspondence. Eventually, the Nobel Prize Committee decided to award both of them Nobel Prize in Physics, and that was a big celebration, of course, and a huge achievement. These were the early stages of the Nobel Prize award. Nobel Prize, the Nobel Prize Committee, right? I mean, early 20th century. So the expectations were very high, and there was no kind of, okay, let's do it, like, okay, we can give her if she really wants the Nobel Prize. It never works this way. It doesn't work this way in 2024 either. So that was a huge achievement to be awarded the Nobel Prize in physics. But what Maria did, a few years later, when she was already a mother of two girls and a widow, because unfortunately Pierre Curie died in Paris. Suddenly he was hit by a horse carriage, unfortunately, and he died. She continued to raise her two daughters on her own. She continued to be working in a world like this. If you like when I see this picture of the most outstanding scientists of that time, you can see that all of them, except for her, look the same. I mean, there is one person who doesn't have, except for Maria, who doesn't have mustache, but all of these scientists gathered here at one of the scientific conferences in Paris, they looked the same. They were the same, like, and then there was Maria, a widow with two children, and working tirelessly on further researches, further developments at that time in chemistry. And now we fast forward a couple of years later, the Nobel Prize Committee was deliberating whether to award her with the second Nobel Prize, which was a huge thing that time in chemistry. However, they were very kind of hesitant. She deserved the Nobel Prize in chemistry. They were hesitant because she was in a relationship with a man who was in a failed marriage. Now, again, early 20th century, not the thing for women to do. So I don't know if you recognize her with one of her best friends here in this picture. This is Albert Einstein. So one of the most outstanding scientists in the history of the world. He wrote to the Nobel Prize Committee. He was already a laureate of the Nobel Prize himself, of course. He wrote, listen, guys, this is unacceptable. You have one of the most outstanding scientists, male or female, you name it, in front of you. She discovered exceptional stuff when it comes to chemistry, and she was already awarded Nobel Prize in physics. Now she deserved the Nobel Prize in chemistry. You need to award her with the Nobel Prize in chemistry because her research deserves that, period. And he convinced them. So apart from having a wonderful sister that she had, Bronisława, apart from having a wonderful husband that she had, who was very supportive of her career, and he was always there for her and working together hand in hand, sometimes you also need a good friend who happens to be the most outstanding scientist of all time. and who will support you whenever someone is telling you that you just don't deserve something because you live your life on your own terms. Now, so she was awarded the second Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and she remains the only scientist to be awarded 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 separate categories. However, she, as we mentioned, she was awarded the first Nobel Prize together with her husband, and that's not it when it comes to Nobel Prizes in the family. Here you can see Maria Skłodowska-Curie together with her older daughter Irene, who later in time was awarded a Nobel Prize together with her husband for their research. So we have many more Nobel Prizes in the family. And the daughter I also mentioned to you, Eve Curie, the second daughter, she was always laughing that I'm the only one without a Nobel Prize in the family. However, as I mentioned, for the biography of Maria Skłodowska-Curie, she received a Pulitzer Prize. So again, a huge recommendation, please read her biography, the biography if you can. And last but not least, about Maria Skłodowska-Curie, there is a theory saying that she deserved also the third Nobel Prize, which would be the Nobel Prize in the Peace Nobel Prize. Why? During World War I, World War I was a tragic conflict, 1914, 1918. Thousands of soldiers were dying on the front lines, and that was happening not only because the fights were so heavy and so bloody, but also because they were not receiving a proper medical care on the front lines, because it was impossible to actually to treat them on the front lines. So what did Maria Skłodowska-Curie do for the French soldiers? She designed mobile X-ray machines. This is one of them. And well, again, X-ray machines were something kind of novel. You know, the technology was like 15 years old, something like this, maybe a little bit older. So still a very novel technology. But she thought, together with her daughter that you have just seen here, they thought that they have to do something about this technology, and they designed mobile X-ray machines, and they started to go to the front lines with these X-ray machines and provide wounded soldiers with X-ray examinations. They started to train other women to do it, and they also built tens, if not hundreds, of these machines themselves. And it is said that, I do not believe that much, this estimate, but there is an estimate saying that thanks to that technology, around 1 million lives of the French soldiers could be saved. Probably this is a little bit exaggerated, but the number is for sure huge. And there are people saying that for that and for changing the course of the war, for making this war a little bit short, at least a little bit shorter, because the French started to retake the initiative from the Germans and win in the conflict, she deserved the third Nobel Prize. We'll never know whether that was anyhow considered, but there is this theory, I heard it a few times, that for that also she deserved to be awarded the Nobel Prize. And you can see a lot about that, like her approach that was not only about science for science, but science in the service of the people. Here we have this case about soldiers, but her research in radioactivity helped develop treatment of cancer. And it's revolutionized the treatment of cancer that we all know that is still very much needed. And all these chemoradiotherapies are very much inspired by the research that Maria Skłodowska-Curie has conducted. Now, I mentioned that I will say that I have something for you all who are going to stay in Washington, D.C., are not traveling to Poland next week. Next weekend, I'll just mute it. Next weekend, in this embassy where I'm sitting right now, we are going to have our annual event that I very much invite you to join. EU open house. So we open door of our embassy for visitors. You do not need to register. You do not need to have a ticket. You don't even need to have a passport to come to us, to see us, to visit us at the embassy, and to experience our EU open house that is going to be dedicated to the one and only Maria Skłodowska-Curie. Now, we invite you to join us here for to enter her world. And we are going to have something really fascinating here for you all. We'll have a fashion show of dresses in the collection from the Polish fashion designer who comes to this event straight from Poland with her collection of dresses inspired by Maria Skłodowska-Curie. These dresses have already been shown at New York Fashion Week, Berlin Fashion Week, and several other fashion weeks. It is going to be huge. We have never organized a fashion show before, so we very much invite you to join us for it. We will have chemical workshops. We will have Kids Corner. We will have a concert of a non-stop concert of music from Maria Skłodowska-Curie's time. We have a wonderful piano here. We will have nitrogen ice cream for everybody, and we'll have so much more. So if you wish to join us, here is our address, all the data. You just need the address. We will be here between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Feel invited, and please join us. You will not regret. Now, going back to the presentation. Last but not least, about Maria Skłodowska-Curie. There is a museum for the person who is going to Poland. There is a museum dedicated to Maria Skłodowska-Curie in Warsaw, in New Town, as we call it, of Warsaw. If you wish to get some details, please write me, and I'll provide you with some details, location, and info about the collection. We also will have 2 exhibitions dedicated to Skłodowska-Curie here. So for those of you who are staying, please feel invited to join us on May 11th and for the EU Open House. Now, I spoke so long about Maria Skłodowska-Curie, half of my time with you all here. So I'll skip most of my heroines here, and I'll tell you only about this one, because I very much enjoy speaking about Helena Modrzejewska, known also as Helena Modrzewska. Why? Because she was a theater actress, huge star of theater stages in Poland, occupied Poland, also 19th century. She was a little bit older than Maria Skłodowska-Curie. She was very, very popular. She was the best actress when it comes to Shakespeare roles in the history of Poland. And at some point, she and her friends, she already achieved everything she could in Poland, occupied Poland again. So together with her friends, they decided, why don't we emigrate to California and try to establish our lives and careers over there? That was a crazy idea of Helena Modrzejewska and her friends to, for example, Henryk Sienkiewicz, who later became the laureate of Nobel Prize in Literature, but that's for another, probably another speaking opportunity with you. They went to California. They established a farm in Anaheim, and that's Sienkiewicz. And she lived there, and she became a huge theater star in the United States as well. Despite the fact that she had a very heavy accent in English, she was extremely popular, and she was conquering stages in New York, in Los Angeles, San Francisco, also Tokyo, London, and globally. With, for example, she played Lady Macbeth over 500 times throughout her lifetime. She played all the Shakespearean female roles outstandingly, and she was the best at that time. And she was not only a theater icon, she was also a fashion icon. There were, whenever she was photographed and her pictures were published in magazines, everybody was going crazy about the hats that she was wearing, the umbrellas, the dresses. Everybody wanted to look like Modrzewska in 1880s in the United States. And she was also an icon of our struggle for independence. For example, she was invited to kind of Expo Global Fair, and she was a beautiful woman as well. She was invited to Chicago to a global fair, to a conference about women and about the suffragist ideas, women who were fighting for voting rights and for independence and for equality. And she was invited there, and she had a speech. It was, I think, 1895, something like that. Don't remember the exact year right now. But she had such a powerful speech, such a fiery speech about the situation of women in occupied Poland and about the Russian Tsar, who was doing his best to keep us dependent and under the boot of the Imperial Russia. That as soon as his agents sent him a cable about her speech and about what she said during her speech in Chicago, she was banned from actually coming back to the part of Poland that was occupied by the Russian Empire at that time. So she, after that, she could never come back to Warsaw until the end of her life. Now, but she remained the icon. Everybody knew the speech. Everybody read the speech in English, in Polish, and that was very much popular. And that was also inspirational for all the women in Poland to keep on fighting for the independence of Poland. In California, you still can experience the traces of or the legacy of Helena Modrzejewska. There is Modrzejewska Canyon, there is Modrzejewska Park, there are Modrzejewska galleries, there are Modrzejewska streets, squares, everything in the neighborhood of Anaheim. And also her son, Ralph Modrzejewski, was a famous bridge engineer. So many of you, when you travel all across the United States, probably are crossing the bridges designed by Ralph Modrzejewski. The company that he established, Modrzejewski and Masters, is still operating. They have their headquarters in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, and they keep designing one of the best bridges in Canada, in the United States, and in other countries of the world. So we can stop here for a moment. I can tell you who else I have in the presentation, and if you pick one other woman, I can speak about her, and then we can also go towards the Q&A, because I really want you to ask questions. I also have Irena Sandlerova, who was a nurse during World War II, who saved many children from the Warsaw Ghetto. And there is a movie about her with one of my favorite actresses, Anna Paquin. I also have here Wisława Szymborska, a famous Polish poet who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1996. And she's one of still probably the most popular female poet that we have had throughout all across the world. I have here Krystyna Hojnowska-Liskiewicz, so a famous sailor of ours, the first woman to sail the world solo. A trailblazer when it comes to sailing. I also have Wanda Rutkiewicz, another trailblazer, a female climber, the first woman to reach K2 in 1986, the third woman to reach Mount Everest, and there is a beautiful story about it. She climbed Mount Everest on the 16th of October 1978, and that was the same day when Polish Cardinal Karol Wojtyła was elected Pope, John Paul II. And they met next year in 1979. And he told her she brought for him, because she knew from the satellite phone that he was elected Pope when she was on the summit of Mount Everest as the third woman in the world, the first European woman and the first Polish woman to reach Mount Everest. So she took a small rock from Mount Everest and she presented it to him in Rome, in Vatican, when they met. And he told her, you know, it's probably the God's will that both of us reached the summits on the very same day. He reached the summit, the top of the Catholic faith, and becoming the Pope in the Vatican, and she reached the tallest summit, the highest summit of the mountains in the world. She's a huge inspiration to all of us at the embassy and beyond, and we love telling the story of hers to the Americans and also to other people who keep coming visiting us. And there is also Professor Maria Simeonov. I love speaking about her because she's doing her career here in the United States. She was born in Poznań. She became a fantastic surgeon in Poland, and she was so great that back in the 1980s, when it was really hardly possible, she was awarded a scholarship in the United States, and she came to the United States, started working at Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, and developing her research in transplant surgery. And she became the head of the team of surgeons that conducted in 2008, conducted the first near total face transplant. That revolutionized transplantology, especially the transplantology of the face tissues globally. Together with her team, she saved the life of Connie Culp, a woman named Connie Culp, who was shot in the face with a shotgun by her husband. She survived miraculously, thanks to the help of the doctors. But her face, I will not show you the pictures today, but you can Google them if you wish. Her face was almost totally destroyed, and they conducted the near total face transplant. The surgery lasted for tens of hours, but they did it, and that was a very successful surgery. And she was then at the press conferences saying that they saved her life. They gave her a new life that revolutionized transplantology globally. Professor Maria Simeonov is still very active. She's not with the Cleveland Clinic anymore. She works in Chicago at the University of Chicago Hospital, and she's building bridges between young surgeons from Poland and America. And she's a wonderful woman who sometimes visits us here at the embassy. Here she is. At this event, we had tens of VIPs, but the longest queue for a selfie was to Professor Maria Simeonov. And she's spectacular. She's the kindest woman and the most humble woman in the world, and also the funniest. And Anna Walentynovich. Usually when I mention her, I ask the question, do you know anything about Lech Wałęsa? And most of the time people say, yeah, of course we do. You know, the man who brought down communism in Poland and established solidarity movement and so on and so forth. So my short answer to that is usually, if not for Anna Walentynovich, there wouldn't be a Lech Wałęsa. She was an icon of the solidarity movement. She was fired from the shipyard, the Gdańsk shipyard, where Solidarity later was established. She was fired from there, and the big strike of the workers of the shipyard that sparked this huge solidarity movement was caused by the situation when she was fired. So the strikers really wanted her to be brought back to work, and this is what started solidarity movement, and this is what started the fall of the communism. We needed 10 years between the Solidarity Carnival and getting rid of communism, and she was pivotal in that process. You can see her here just next to Lech Wałęsa, and also here at some other pictures. And this is my favorite comparison. On the right side, you can, there was this, in 2020, there was this big initiative of Time magazine that for International Women's Day and Women's History Month, they had this initiative. Over the last 100 years, for every year, we pick one woman who was pivotal for the history of that, during that year. 1948, you can see here Eleanor Roosevelt, who was, of course, we all know who Eleanor Roosevelt was. She was picked for 1948 because she was pivotal for the world to accept, the United Nations to accept the Declaration on Human Rights. This portrait, trivia thing, was painted by a Polish artist and is visible in the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. For 1980, for the year of the Solidarity Carnival in Poland, the Solidarity movement that started to bring communism not only in Poland, but also in other countries of our region to its knees, Time magazine chose Anna Walentynovich. So that should say a lot about the meaning of Anna Walentynovich for our country. If you like reading, This is the book written in English by Shayna Penn about women of the Solidarity Movement. It's available on Amazon and elsewhere. It's a perfect read. So if you are searching for some lectures for the summer, this is it. You need to read it. And last but not least, Olga Tokarczuk. She's a Nobel Prize laureate, another one in literature, stemming from Poland. She was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2018. Her books are translated to English all the time, and you can find them in every single bookstore, and I very much recommend them because they are a perfect fusion of very different genres of literature, perfect for the 21st century, that really enjoys and helps us enjoy transition between very different kinds of science and literature and culture. Everything where you have a lot of fusion works best. And my favorite story about Olga Tokarczuk is her dress. Usually I hate these, huge galas, red carpet galas, when women are asked, what are you wearing? Who are you wearing today? It's, and they are always very embarrassed, saying, I'm not here for my dress, I'm here for my achievements, to celebrate my achievements in the film industry. But Olga Tokarczuk, when she was accepting the Nobel Prize in Literature, she wore a dress that was designed by a Polish fashion designer, Gosia Baczyńska, but was inspired by the dress of Selma Lagerlöf, Swedish writer, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature as the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature exactly 100 years before Olga Tokarczuk. And she had very similar, dress to the one that Selma Lagerlöf has. And that's also saying a lot about the history of women. We always feel that we can inspire each other, we can empower each other. And this is the story also of Polish women, that throughout the years, throughout the centuries, we have been encouraging and empowering each other, so that now Poland has, for example, when it comes to pay gap, we are just beside Scandinavia. We have wonderful authors, we have wonderful teachers, we have wonderful doctors. We still have a lot to do when it comes to women empowerment, when it comes to equality between men and women, gender equality. Of course, no country has a perfect situation, but we are getting there. And this is also the story of not only of history, but also of contemporary times in Poland. We are getting there. Last but not least, first Polish MPs, 1919. We got voting rights in 1919. We regained independence 1918. Got voting rights for women in 1919. First parliamentary elections in reborn Poland, 1919. And we have the first female MPs in 1919. I hope it says a lot about my country, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Katarzyna. That was wonderful. Really appreciate it. We have thank you in the chat. That was awesome. Do we have any questions? And if you don't want to put them in the chat, you can just use the raise hand function or unmute yourselves.
I see in the chat that there is a request to say a few things about Irena Sendlerova, so I can jump back to the presentation and tell you a little bit more about Irena Sendlerova. She's also one of the persons that I really like to tell the story of, because you may not know this. I was before coming to the United States, I was posted to Israel for 4 years. So I was, of course, speaking a lot about the history of the Holocaust and the history of World War II, and which is, of course, a very painful chapter of the history of the world. And one of the persons that we were speaking a lot about was, of course, Irena Sendlerova, who received the title of the Righteous Among the Nations, who received the many medals in Poland as well, the honorary citizenship of Israel that is connected with the title of the Righteous Among the Nations. So she was brought up in the outskirts of Warsaw. And she was always, I live in the same area in Warsaw right now, where she was brought up in. And prior to the war, it was a very diverse area. We had many people from many different communities living there. And there was also a large Jewish community in that neighborhood. And she was brought up over there by very well educated family. And she always knew that people are, like different. People can pray differently. People can celebrate different occasions, holidays, and everything. And that was for her, that was a very regular thing. Now, when the Germans attacked us, and then 17 days later, we were attacked by the Soviet Union, and the Germans established ghettos in many cities of the world. And there was a ghetto established, of course, in Warsaw. There was this kind of dissent in her, like since day one. We were occupied. We had occupiers with a awful, horrifying ideology standing behind them. They were killing us. They were killing other people on the streets all across Europe and beyond all the time. That was, World War II was a bloody conflict, and this occupation was bloody too. Now, when they established the Warsaw Ghetto, she was involved in the resistance efforts since day one of World War II, and then establishment of the Warsaw Ghetto. And at some point, there was a larger group of the Poles, Catholic Poles, who decided to establish the aid for, I know the name in Polish, the Commission for the Aid of the Jews who were imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto. And they started working towards smuggling people out of the ghetto and providing them with safe haven and shelters outside of the ghetto. That was bloody dangerous. Poland was one of, I think, only 2 countries across Europe, where any help towards the Jews imprisoned in ghettos was punished by death. So whatever you do, whether you wanted to give someone a glass with water, you wanted to give someone some bread, you wanted to keep someone in your home, you wanted to raise their children when they were imprisoned or sent to the camps, you were risking death for a glass of water and for something much more substantial. So that these were the conditions. Now, her team in this commission was responsible for smuggling children out of the ghetto. That was a very dangerous work, of course, for the reasons I just mentioned, but also there was Gestapo working, operating everywhere. And like you can imagine that smuggling children out of the ghetto is not the easiest thing to do. But they were doing that for many months. They were taking children out of the ghetto, and they were placing them in safe houses, and also with Catholic nuns, for example, and in many other places. Now, no one knows how many children were saved by the team of Irena Sendler. There were estimates saying, and there is this number, very popular number, saying that she and her team, they saved 2,500 children. There are some estimates that saying that this number is much closer to 1,000. But you know what she was always saying, because she lived very, a long life. She was always saying throughout her life that she doesn't know how many children she saved, but she knows that she didn't save enough. And thousands of children died in the Warsaw Ghetto, and millions of children, over 1.5 million Jewish children died in the Holocaust, if not more. So that was a tragedy for her, that she couldn't save many more children than she did. But she did save a lot of children. She was arrested by Gestapo once, and she was beaten and she was tortured, and she never revealed any single name of any child, of any person who was hiding the children, nothing. She never revealed anything, and she survived the war. Now, after the war, as I mentioned before, we were under communism, so her story was not that much known throughout the years. And it was rediscovered actually in the United States. At the turn of the 20th century, there was a group of children in one of the schools, either in Kansas or in Colorado, I don't recall, the exact place very well right now, but there was a group of children in high school. Children like to, and sometimes are asked to, put up some theater plays in school, and some children, a group of children, discovered her story somehow, and they built theater play around it, and they started to play it, and then it became very, very popular in the United States and beyond. The children went to see Irena Sendlerowa in Poland because she was still alive at that time. She passed away in 2008, and so that was a couple of years prior to her passing. And the movie that I mentioned, you can see the number 2,500 here. The movie was based actually on that theater play. I saw this movie. It is an exceptional one. I very much recommend it to you. I think it's you can find it now on Apple TV, if I'm not mistaken. I was checking it a couple of weeks back. If you like Goran Visnic, who is also one of my favorite actors, you will surely like this movie, even though, of course, it's a World War II based story, real story, so it's not a easy film to watch. But I very much recommend it to you. You will delve into her story, and you will learn much more about the heroism of Irena Sendler, and also about the situation during World War II under Nazi Germany occupation of Poland.
I would just chime in and say that the award that she won, the Righteous Among the Nations, also referred to as Righteous Gentile, is the highest honor you can receive from Yad Vashem, which is the memorial, the Holocaust memorial in Israel. And it is a place where people, non-Jewish people, risk their lives, as Katarzyna pointed out, risk their lives, went out of their way to save Jewish people during the Holocaust, and it is an extremely high honor. Do we have any other questions? We're just about out of time, but this is just fascinating, and so I want to give people a chance to ask a question.
Well, I have a question that was sent directly to me in the chat, and we do not have much time probably to cover that. And but I will mention it. There is a question about the current state of the debate on reproductive rights in Poland. Now, this is not the topic of our meeting today, but I can say that there is a big debate in Poland right now following the parliamentary elections of last autumn, fall. And this is an ongoing debate, how the situation is going to look like in the months to come. There was a big change in the legislation in 2020 when we had a conservative government at that time. There is not much to say about the situation right now because, again, this is a very delicate issue and a very big debate that is ongoing, underway in Poland right now. We will see where the current government is going to go towards when it comes to this legislation. And if we meet within a couple of months, I might be able to share more with you, but yeah, usually these changes and these debates, as you can see in the United States, they need to last long. It needs, the society needs time to come up with, and also the governments, with decisions, and also these issues are very delicate. So there is a lot of vulnerability in every single corner of that discussion.
Thank you for that. Do we have any last questions? This was absolutely fascinating and awesome, and I so appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you in the audience for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. Please remember May 11th. We invite you all for EU Open House here at the Embassy, 2640 16th Street. Maria Skłodowska-Curie is going to be very broadly celebrated. Thank you.
It sounds like a wonderful event. Thank you so much. Everybody take care. Be well. Thank you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.